Welcome to the ATA Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Baird, and you're listening to Inside Specialization, our new series on the what, why, and how of specializing in a specific field of translation or interpreting. In each episode, members of ATA's Professional Development Committee will interview translation and interpreting specialists. They'll ask about what the work entails, what skills are needed, the pros and cons, and so much more. The goal is to showcase the variety of career paths in translation and interpreting and help working professionals and students understand what's out there, how they can get started, and what they need to succeed. Specialization is arguably the best way to strengthen your translation and interpreting business and stand out from the crowd. We're hoping to bring you one episode a month, and we hope you'll join us on this informative journey. This podcast is brought to you by the American Translators Association. If you'd like to know more about ATA, we'll have some information at the end of the show. All right, now over to the PD Committee and this edition of Inside Specialization.
Hi, and welcome to Inside Specialization, an all-new feature of the ATA podcast on specialization and diversification. My name is Veronika Demichelis, and I am chair of ATA's Professional Development Committee. It is so exciting to bring this new series to life as a special collaboration between the ATA podcast and ATA's Professional Development Program. In this episode, I have with me Karen Tkaczyk, the current ATA Secretary and an ATA Certified Translator for French into English, and we are going to talk about what it's like to be a highly specialized technical translator. Karen Tkaczyk first trained as a chemist, and then after having children, she changed course and became a French to English translator and scientific editor. She has been translating and editing French into English, localizing English, and editing non-native English since 2005. She is certified by ATA and is a fellow of the Institute of Translation and Interpreting in the UK. Karen is originally from Scotland and now works from her home in the Denver, Colorado area. She had 3 children under 5 when she started freelancing, and now she is soon to be an empty nester. Karen thinks that what might be the most unusual about her translation practice is the amount of work she refuses. She'll tell us why that is later on. Welcome, Karen.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. So let's talk about your background. Would you describe your background to us and tell us how you started translating for the chemical industry?
Yes, so as you said, I'm from Scotland, indeed, grew up there in the UK largely. My early career was as a laboratory and industrial chemist, a development chemist in the pharma industry after I finished studies. So that's where the subject matter expertise comes from. I moved to the US in 1999. I worked for a cosmetic company and then had children and stopped working. And at some point by the time I had 3 children, had an aha moment and realized that there were linguists out there in the world with an area of subject expertise, and they worked freelance and you could do it from home. And it was one of those things that just seemed like a perfect fit. So I joined ATA. I set up a profile on prose.com. I made a website. I bought what was called Trados Workbench at that time. And I got started. That was at the end of 2005. And then my very, very first translation jobs were in the holiday season. And I got them from prose.com. So back in the day. And then I did make back that seed. I had seed money. I had $2,000 of seed money to get started. And I had made that seed money back before it ran out. I had earned my first income. I mean, you know what I mean? My balance never went to zero.
Right,
so that was, so I had a very fast start in 2000. And like I said, so I declared myself a translator in October 2005. And then in February 2006, that was the first time I refused work because I was too busy. I really picked up clients very quickly at the beginning.
Wow. Yeah, that's an amazingly fast start. So why do you think that happened? Why did you get such a fast start?
Well, I think it was credentials and subject matter expertise. I'm not going to pretend that having a PhD in chemistry didn't help in all those, in my subject lines and applying to agencies. And yeah, so I think credentials in the subject matter probably are the reason I got such a fast start. Yeah, got me a foot in the door.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. But not everyone has such credentials. So, in your opinion, do technical translators working in a hard science or engineering need to have that background to succeed? Or is it something that anyone can learn and get better at gradually?
No, you don't have to have it. It is possible to do this without the credentials. So the way I look at this is that there are two avenues usually that technical translators take that are career changers who have a field, a subject, an area of subject expertise, and they need to work on their languages as a rule. When they join, they can't write, perhaps they don't write very well in their native language, or their source language isn't that strong, or whatever the case may be. But typically they have a field and they need to work on their languages and their writing. And then you have other kinds of translators who don't have the educational background in that hard science or whatever, but they want to build a sci-tech specialization. What I find is that those people, and I know them, I know a number of really great translators who fall into that category. They tend to have they tend to be very curious about how things work. They tend to be the kind of people who take a lot of courses, do a lot of reading, are very happy to learn and grow and put in the time it takes to build the subject matter expertise. And for all your listeners, Ben, Carl, and I covered this topic in a webinar in the Back to Basics webinar series that members can find on demand in the ATA website's webinar section. And we too came into and specialized from those two different angles. So we were a good pair for that topic. So for more discussion on that, members can get that webinar free. But yeah, I know good technical translators who don't have the credentials in the field, who've built it up later. But on the other hand, the SciTech division at ATA is full of people like me who are career changers who do have a hard science, past, if you like, and then became translators.
Yeah. So, what are some typical translation assignments that you work on in this subject area, and who are your typical clients?
Okay, so I'll start with who. So for me, my clients are about half agency and half end clients. And I didn't start that way. When I started and had those little children at home, I only worked for agencies. So for years, I only worked for agencies. But then once they got bigger and it became easier to handle everything, to handle the needs of direct clients where you can't just say no as easily, then I picked some of those up. I like that half and half balance. It suits me. And that's the way my practice has been for a long time. And I'm happy with that. So that's who. Oh, and one point to make. So I'm obviously, I translate in chemistry, pharma, cosmetics, adhesive, grout, you name it, any kind of chemical from bulk to specialty. But people sometimes imagine that means my direct clients might be big pharma, the big names that they know who are making our vaccines and things like that. But those are not my direct clients. My direct clients are smaller chemical companies, medium size sometimes, but smaller, medium size. And I have found that big pharma, for instance, uses big localization companies. So it makes sense. They've got massive volumes, massive numbers of languages. So my clients are not the big name chemical or pharma companies that you might know. So that's who. What? So, well, quality assurance documents, technical specifications, certificates of analysis, regulatory affairs dossiers, standard operating procedures, work instructions, patents. Are you bored yet? Manufacturing records. Validation and qualification procedures, sterility and packaging procedures, product descriptions, equipment descriptions, data sheets. And then there are a couple of things that I don't do very often, but anybody who worked out of English in my field would do a lot. So safety data sheets are the big one. I've translated 2 ever in my entire career because they're always in English and you need to translate those out of English. And manuals, user manuals. Similarly, many user manuals in my field are in English, and it, so that would be a big portion of work for those working out of English, but not so much for me, working in English.
Wow. What stands out to me, it's such a narrow subject area. It's so specific, but the list is long. So it seems like it's like a broad range of things, but I know it's really specialized. And that sounds overwhelming to someone who isn't familiar with the field. So how do you keep up to date with the area and keep your specialization strong?
Well, you read a lot. So some of what I said about building a specialization applies to keeping one, right? So I read trade journals. I'm subscribed to trade journals in my areas of expertise, and I spend time actually reading something new every week. I am a member of the American Chemical Society, so I have access to all their materials. I've been to their conferences a number of times. I've spoken at their conferences even, but I, hobnob with other chemists, network with other people who know the subject. That's another way to keep it strong. In the normal course of doing my work, I research by reading manufacturers' websites, by reading reading about the new regulations that are going to come out, descriptions of changes about, emissions levels that are going to change, or new lists of prohibited ingredients for cosmetic packaging and all sorts of things like that. So it's about reading and investing in the subject matter. And that's how I keep up with it, really. And then I mentioned that I do, or you mentioned in the bio, that I do non-native editing work too. So that for me is largely journal articles that are going to be published. And that is a really great way to help build my specialization, because I'm editing articles that are by definition new science or technology or new applications in my fields. And the terminology is always right in those texts. Those authors always know the terminology, they have the subject matter expertise. It's the English that I'm fixing. So that non-native work that I do is a lucrative way of building my specialization, if you want to look at it that way. So it's a diversification in the sense that it's a different kind of work, but it's not a diversification in the subject matter that I'm building.
Yeah, it's a win-win for you. Great. So you've talked about subject matter expertise a lot and how you keep up with it. So what other skills do highly specialized technical translators need?
Terminology research, right? It's same as any, some of the answer here is going to overlap with lots of other kinds of translators, isn't it? But yeah, the terminology research, because some of these terms are just new or complex, and you have to know the difference between the subtleties of the various kinds of, like nuts and bolts, you could say, the various kinds of nuts and bolts, right? I'm not dealing with nuts and bolts. I'm dealing with pieces of syringes or hoses in a manufacturing tank or the actual chemicals, but you get the idea. Some terminology research skills so that you can find the correct term for the job, for the context. And technical translators need to be great technical writers. We hear a lot from literary translators or even marketing and communications translators about their writing skills, polished texts and, persuading the audience and all that. But technical translators who are great technical writers are serving their clients really well. And that is a subject I've spoken about and written on even a lot over the years, because I think it's a skill that we can build up really well and quite easily.
That sounds like such a fascinating area, but were you ever tempted to broaden your fields and offer services in other areas?
Hardly ever. I accept something once in a while to help out a client. And that usually reminds me why I like being specialized, right? We've all been there, right?
Yeah.
For me, it's usually something clinical, medical. I do as a favor. I was like, oh, really? I should have handed this one off to, my favorite clinical medical translator who likes this kind of thing. So personally, I love working on texts that interest me, right? I believe that boredom produces bad work. And I pride myself in producing excellent work every job, right? We're only as good as our last job. So I'm very interested in being interested in what I do and following my quality assurance processes and all the rest. But if I'm interested, it's so much easier to do a good job. And and that's part of my motivation. So I have rarely been tempted to broaden my fields. I was told right at the beginning, though, that I would have to. That's an interesting tidbit from the early days when I was getting everything started and introducing myself to a few people. Right at the beginning, someone said, chemistry won't be enough. You'll have to be medical. You need to be a medical translator too. You won't get enough work as a chemistry translator. And so ever since then, I've been saying, well, you know what? I only need enough work for me.
Right.
Whatever it is, 15,000 words or 20,000 words or whatever it is I want in any given week. I only need enough for me. And I have managed to build my practice without, for instance, adding that clinical medical stuff. I don't do medical records, for instance. I don't do the much of that clinical side of medical translation. So encouraged once or twice at the beginning, but rarely tempted. And the other, I've already mentioned the non-native editing work that I do. I do I localize English also for a number of LSPs. And that isn't something I ever advertised. It just came to me initially. I was in people's databases as working French into British English and French into US English. And someone just approached me one day and said, hey, can you do US into UK English? And I said, well, why not? I suppose so. Anyway, that editing work, localization work tends to be minimum jobs. And it tends to be the things that I can fit in as a sort of changes as good as a rest in the midst of all sorts of denser jobs, let's say. So that's quite good for another area, if you like, that I never planned to offer when I started this work, but it's just, a few minimum jobs here and there all the time, a minimum job a week, let's say, every year. So that's a little bit of diversification. And of course, it helps me because I translate into both UK and US English. Having work that is specifically designed to make those edits makes me monitor changes in that area and keeps me researching that. So it's good for me all in all. I mean, my various things I do all build up an area of expertise that I want to build up.
Yeah, and all of them sounds great. And I think your message about only needing as much work as you actually need is a great one that we need to continue sharing. So you sound like you really enjoy what you do. Is there anything you particularly like or dislike about being a technical translator?
Yeah. Well, I think it's fair to say I do enjoy what I do. I love technical writing. I'm a natural technical writer. That's my instinctive writing style. So I really enjoy making things clear, concise, precise, easy to read, easy to understand with the focus on the user. So that suits, obviously, when that suits for being a technical translator. I don't like badly written source texts. I see those fairly often, but don't we all? There's nothing special about technical translation, if you like, on that front. That's pretty typical. I really like producing a text that's better than the original. So, you know, making a text that's better written or clearer or more, you know, more something, better in some way. I enjoy that. I take professional pride in producing texts that are better than the one I started with. So that's another thing I like. I could go on, but that's probably enough.
So what about machine translation? Has it impacted or disrupted your area of work? So people who might be listening to your interview and be thinking, oh, that sounds like something I could pursue. Can they expect to be post-editing machine translation?
Good question. So my work is less threatened than the work of some of my peers because my subject matter expertise makes me valuable. So even if neural machine translation takes over some of our work, subject matter expert editing is unlikely to fade. That's unlikely to go away, in my opinion. In fact, I think it's likely to be crucial in that scenario. And I'm well placed to provide that service. And one thing I did, so in 2020, I had, as many others did, a nasty lull in the second and third quarters. And one of the things I did then was apply for a neural machine translation. I put an editing project. It was a pilot project on something that I know a lot about, a pharmaceutical project. And it was a client who wanted exactly what I just described, subject matter experts to improve texts that had been translated by a number of different engines. And because it was a pilot project, they were going to look at the different engines and compare and contrast and decide which one to use moving forward. Anyway, I took that on. It paid well. It paid per hour. I recognize that not all post-editing work pays well. Often it's simply a cost-cutting measure. But thankfully, I don't have to take that work on. I still have plenty of clients who are comfortable paying me well. So do I think that newcomers in technical translation will be post-editing? Yes. Yes, I do. But I would say that of almost every field. There's nothing special about technical translation. I think financial translators and legal translators and you name it will be post-editing in some market segments. So has it disrupted my area of work? No, it hasn't, in that I haven't lost any clients to machine translation. At least none that I know of. No one said, oh, by the way, we're taking everything to machine translation and take it or leave it. I do know that that is happening and has happened in patent translation quite a lot. Patent translation is part of my work. It's probably about 10% of my work, but I suppose I was already only working for the higher paying agencies in that field. So they haven't gone to MT yet, right? Some of the lower paying agencies for patent translators, I know, went wholesale into MT and people lost a big chunk of their work overnight. That was before the pandemic, but it's been going, I mean, as you know, as all of us know, that's been going on for various clients in various fields for the past few years.
Yeah.
So it hasn't disrupted me personally. I do expect people to have to consider post-editing. And in fact, I'm quite happy doing it for the right rate, the right, amount of money. Although I do feel that I wouldn't want to be doing only post-editing. I think we need to be doing real translation as well, because post-editing messes up your writing skills. I think it does. If you do only that, or you do too much of that to the exclusion of what you might call normal translation.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it does sound like the subject matter expertise is a crucial differentiating factor here too.
Yeah.
So we began by saying that you refuse a lot of work. Tell us more about this.
Right. Yeah. Well, if you're specialized, you say no to all the work you're offered that doesn't fit the bill, right?
Yeah.
I have found over the years, over and over and over again, because people often say to me, wait, if you're that specialized, maybe you could do other stuff. Did they not ever, maybe they never ask you for anything else. If you say you can do chemistry, they won't offer you biology or whatever it may be. So that has not been my experience. I have found that if a client likes you, they like your work, they often try you for lots of work in your pair, or even work in other pairs. We all get odd requests. It's like, can you do Spanish into English chemistry as well? Well, let's not, or whatever the case may be. So I have found that clients tend to try you for everything. Therefore, I have great experience in saying, no, I am not interested in translating that, but you could try this person and this person who, and send them their email address, or refer them to the ATA database if I don't have someone in mind, or the ITI database if it's for British English. So I have said no to a lot of work over the years, and not just because I was too busy. You don't like to say no to projects that pay well and are in the area you want to work in, right? I do my best to say yes to that kind whenever possible. But I refuse a lot of work because it's in the wrong subject matter at my rate. And then on top of that, of course, there's all the work I refuse because it's not going to pay me as much as I want to earn. So yeah, for a while I tracked it. There was 1 year where I was tracking it to get a feel for how much work I was refusing. And I was refusing twice as much work as I was taking. And I was busy. And anyway, I say no a lot, and I say no a lot with a referral. That's become my habit over the years. And so my referral network of other translators becomes very important. And of course, in return, I receive a lot of work through word of mouth referrals from my colleagues who, love to translate whatever it is, engineering, but stay away from chemistry. Or, I get a lot of referrals too, because there aren't that many people like me who claim to translate chemistry. So I do try to not refuse work from my direct clients. To be fair, I'll just make that distinction. The work I'm refusing is usually from agencies, or also personal documents. I get, I'm sure lots, as many of us do, I get phone calls from people who live close to me asking for me to translate, birth certificates and the like, and I always refer those on to someone else. But other direct clients that I actually covet or seek, if it's over, if they send me a contract one day instead of a set of technical data sheets, then I'll probably outsource it to a legal translation colleague and still deliver it to them. I have permission to do that, of course. They know what my expertise is, and they're happy for me to handle the project management for that. I don't like doing languages I can't do the quality assurance on personally. I won't be scaling up into a boutique type who wants to, who takes all languages on. I like to stick to French and English, but so for direct clients, I try to refuse less and work with the deadlines. But for agencies, I refuse and refer very often.
Thank you so much, Karen. Great advice, and it's been really insightful to learn more about the field that you work in. Thank you for your time and for letting us learn more about your specialization.
Well, it's been my pleasure. I hope that's useful to someone listening. Feel free to connect with me in any of the science and technology divisions networking groups. I think I'm in them all. Or on LinkedIn or anywhere like that. It's been my pleasure. And I've been so very happy with this career as a highly specialized technical translator.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen. I'm sure that our listeners will find your advice helpful and inspiring.
You've been listening to Inside Specialization, our new series on the what, why, and how of specializing in a specific field of translation or interpreting. Big thanks to everyone involved in the production of this episode. ATA's PD committee developed and coordinated the interview. Mixing and editing was done by Derek Platz. Mary David and Rashawn Paccarel at ATA headquarters provided editorial and technical support. Now, if you learned anything new in today's podcast, I bet there's somebody out there who would like to know it too. Don't be stingy. Tell them about us. I've gotten to know so many great podcasts that way. I promise they'll thank you for it. And if you're not an ATA member, listen up. I've been a member for over 20 years. I can honestly say that ATA launched my freelance career, and I've never looked back. Nowadays, the demand for translators and interpreters is at an all-time high, but finding quality work isn't easy. ATA membership can make a difference. And ATA isn't just for translators or interpreters. Individuals, companies, and organizations can become members. We have teachers, professors, hospital administrators, language company owners, technology developers, as well as language companies, universities, hospitals, and government agencies. Go to ATA's website, atanet.org, for details. Or check out past episodes of this podcast where we talk about the benefits of membership and what's currently happening in the association. Thanks again for listening, everyone. Talk to you again soon.